Hey, what's up? It's Ethan Bence, and we're going to be going over the background writing process and recording process of my new song, Goticas.
A mí me pones loco. A mí me pones loco.
All right, so obviously, if you're, hearing me talk right now, Spanish is not my first language. I'm okay at it. I'm not the best at Spanish by any means or any stretch of the imagination, but reggaeton is something that is like very near and dear to my heart. I spend typically about like half the year roughly in Colombia, in Bogota, in Medellin. And so I spent a ton of time in Medellin before. And, it's like you can't go anywhere without hearing reggaeton. And in my opinion, reggaeton is like one of the coolest genres, period, because the tracks are so like stripped down and sparse in a really cool way. And so the melody and the lyrics have to drive it. Like the vocals, the lyric, like literally it's like all vocals and the drums. Boom, 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 boom. Right. So it's like, anyway, in my opinion, like that's why I think I like reggaeton. It's something that we don't really have in the US of like, which is one universal genre that everybody knows every song for. It's like the ultimate like going out or party music, essentially. You know what I mean? Like if you're like hanging with friends or whatever, reggaeton is the best. And so like I said, I spent a lot of my time in Colombia. I'm in Colombia right now. I'm in Bogota. It's like my adopted home. You know what I mean? Like I spend more time in Colombia than I do in the US in a lot of cases. You know what I mean? So it's my adopted home. All right. So I was back visiting my parents in Pittsburgh and I heard the track initially. I heard the instrumental and boom, it immediately hit me. A mí me pones loco. That immediately hit me. And so I opened up the computer and I started writing. And I was like, ooh, this is kind of cool. It's like a super chill track. Again, the guitar on it is awesome. So like I love that guitar. But I went into the room and I just started listening to it. I started writing. And I was like, man, like, what is this song? Like, what is it about? You know what I mean? Because I was like, yeah, like it's about a girl. Like, it's sort of like that kind of whole, like meeting a girl kind of thing when you're out. But I was like, I feel like it's more about that. So the entire song is a double entendre, but it's entire double meaning, which I'm not going to get too much into. But I wrote like the first and second verse. I got the bridge down. And like for me, like honestly, sometimes again, Spanish isn't my first language, but sometimes you can express yourself just better in other languages. There's just certain things that you want to say that you can't really say in your language or that just sound better in Spanish, for example. You know what I mean? And so that's why, like in this case, there's a lot of Spanglish because it's just how it came out. And honestly, for like the reggaeton rhythm, Spanish sounds a lot better in a lot of cases. You know what I mean? So for Goticas, that's the theory behind it. That's the thinking process behind it is like, okay, how can I like combine both of these things? I finished the first verse. I finished the second verse in Pittsburgh. I was going to New York the next day. I had a session booked at Quad Studios, which obviously is like really important, for me. Again, if you've seen the back video, Tupac is one of my favorites. And obviously that's where Tupac initially got robbed and shot, at Quad Studio. So like to be able to record there, like that's like a trip. That's a whole other thing, you know what I mean, that we'll talk about. But I had a session booked for Friday or Saturday maybe. I was driving up with two of my friends and I had the hook. I had the first verse and the second verse. And I'm like, we're driving like on the way to New York. I'm like trying to finish it. This is again, like I said, like a week or two after the car wreck that I was in after the car accident. I was going to, New York for a little bit. And then that's when I was going to go out to Paris after. So again, you can see all the stuff is intertwined. And like the concept of the song came to me, like it hit me out of nowhere. Again, I was writing and I was like, oh, this is what it's about. Duh. Like it was like my subconscious writing. It was kind of weird. So I didn't have the third verse. So we were like in the car, I'm in the back seat. I had my computer up like on my lap, like in the back seat of the car. I'm like listening, writing, like blah, 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 blah. Finished up in that car ride. And then in Quad on the next day, which I think was it might have been honestly, that was New Year's Eve. I think I recorded this on New Year's Eve. It's like one of those things, like, again, I love recording myself. So in Quad, I just recorded myself. Like I had my room, I had the favorite vocal chain again, the C800 into the Neve, like great, awesome. This sounds amazing. And like the layers of the hook, the layers of the verses, the layers of the vocals, those are super important too, just from like a conceptual standpoint, but also just from like a sonic standpoint. That was a fun one to record. Actually, that was like a really fun one to record. It took forever because I had to record like 15 layers for each of them. And then comping those vocals and editing that session was insane, which I had to do. That took me like forever to do, but it was well worth it because I love this song. So I recorded that in New York and then I actually went back a day or two later. I ended up rewriting some stuff and re-recording that. And so just, comping that together at the end. But that's kind of the story of Goticas and how that came about is like written, just like in my old room, you know what I mean, my parents' house, and then in the car. Like, I guess, like, for me at least, the learning lesson from that is not giving yourself an excuse of like, oh no, I need to be like in a beautiful studio like this in order to make anything. It's like, no, you could be literally in a car, on a plane, you could be in your room, you could be in your basement. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you know, you can't let the inspiration wait to come to you. You have to like force things through sometimes. And so this is another one where writing it was a little bit difficult because, like I said, in terms of the Spanish side of things, it was a little bit difficult because, again, Spanish is my first language. So like sometimes like I have to like get into that mind in my brain. It's like, not only do I have to make sure that it makes sense and make sure that I'm feeling it, but like make sure the rhythm is in place. So it's like there are 3 or 4 variables to it. But in this case, like I said, the Spanish side of things was like it was better, was easier because that's just like what I was feeling. So that's pretty much the backstory of Goticas, how it came about, and how I wrote it and how I recorded it.